building. I was hoping that sign after this is British. This is perfect. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad you're all here, and that we're going to have the opportunity to listen to Dorothea, or Ms. Smartt's poetry. It should be formal, Ms. Smartt's poetry, and talk with her about her work. I want to congratulate Aza, Dr. Weir-Soley on this event, and AADS, and I want to just sort of point out what an exciting moment this is right now for African and African diaspora studies, to be able to welcome Dorothea to campus today and tomorrow at EBC at 7 p.m. Last Friday there was, what number now are we in the Williams Lecture?
15.
The 15th annual Eric Williams Memorial Lecture occurred. It was, from what I hear from Dr. Russell, a tremendous success. Several of you may have heard about the events that are occurring next week with the Zimbabwean poet in exile, Chen Hole, who will be here on Monday night and next Wednesday speaking. And then on the 15th of November, the 4th annual Humanities Afternoon for AADS. So Dorothea is speaking and performing to us today in the midst of what rightly is a really exciting and vibrant time for FIU and for those of you who are studying and do your work in African and African diaspora studies. Without being too cynical or too flip about this, FIU is very intent, rightly, on what it calls global learning. All of you who are students know about the importance FIU has placed on global learning is that which you must do before you can graduate. But I've been saying to students, I'll probably say it next week when I'm at the holiday events, that in my mind, what universities really should be doing in real global learning is what we're doing today. Having the most important and most significant poets and authors working, no matter where they may be and what their circumstances might be, come to you and share their work with you and talk with you about what they're trying to do. And that is not to dismiss the important work that you do in official global learning courses. But I think that this is a really significant kind of learning you do, and I applaud all of you for taking the time, even if your professors asked you or even forced you to come to this. I have no problem with that coercion, because for me, this is where it's really at. So I want to, again, congratulate Aza and AADS on having Dorothea here to share her poetry with you. And thank you for coming. Thank you, Aza.
I also wanted to point out that this event is being recorded for future use by FIU courses by WPBT at the behest of Professor Michael Gillespie from the Center for Humanities. So he's not here at the moment. He wasn't able to stay because he has a class, but I'd like us to do him. Students will come after you who will not have had the privilege of doing this, but it will be recorded for the site. That's wonderful. At this time, I would like to bring Professor Stephen Blevins forward to say a few words about women and gender queer studies.
Thank you, Aza. Thank you all for coming, and welcome to this event today. It's really heartening to see a room full of students at a poetry meeting. I think this is really fantastic. So again, thanks Aza and others for organizing and sponsoring it. One of the sponsors for today's events is the program in Women and Gender Studies. Part of the program in Women and Gender Studies is an undergraduate certificate available to students, which is, if you've not seen a certificate program before, kind of like an interdisciplinary minor, but a certificate in queer studies. So if you're interested in issues related to the LGBT FIU community or are interested in comparative sexualities, and even if you're in English or if you're in any of the other majors across campus, it might be a program of interest to you. It requires 18 hours of accredited classes, 6 hours or 2 classes that are required within the certificate program, and then 4 others that are electives. So more information can be found on the certificate in queer studies at the Women and Gender Studies website. If you look at the programs link on the left-hand side, you'll see a link to the description and requirements, and contact information should you want to pursue or talk more about that certificate. And so let me just recognize Lori Schrag, Professor of Philosophy and Women and Gender Studies at FIU, and he's not here this semester, but Professor Whitney Bowman in the Department of Religious Studies is another contact person, and then myself, Stephen Levins, in the English department. So you can also always just drop us an email. We'd be more than happy to talk to you more about the program. But once again, I welcome you all. I welcome Dorothea Smartt. Thank you very much for organizing.
All right. Without further ado, let me introduce guests of the evening. Dorothea Smartt. Dorothea Smartt is a poet, a live artist, and a literary activist. She was born and brought up in London. She is of Albanian heritage. Described as a Brit-born Asian international, her work typically bridges the islands of Britain and Barbados, effortlessly shuttling between local and global scenes as it weaves a diasporic web. She's the author of 2 poetry collections, Connecting Medium and Ship Shape, both with People Tree Press, and has been featured in several anthologies and journals, most recently Figurance, or International Queer Anthology from Local Press, and the Poetry Review. Her poems are featured on www.poetryarchive.org, the world's premier online collection of recordings by poets. She's associate poetry editor of Sable Lit Mag and guest editor of their landmark 2006 LGBT issue and their forthcoming LGBTQI issue in 2014. Most recently, she contributed to the Association of Writers and Writing Programs Convention 2013 that was held in Boston, and the Organization of Women Writers of Africa Symposium, Yari Yari, in 2013 in Accra, Ghana. She's an honorary team member of Cambridge University's Caribbean Chronicle Poetry Project and co-director of Inscribe, a national writing development program for writers of African and Asian descent. Let us put our hands together for Ms. Dorothea Smartt.
I won't talk between the poems and stuff. I think I'll just dive in and begin at the beginning. So that to me means acknowledging the dead in some ways. So this poem was inspired by the death of my father some years ago and the death of my then partner, her mother. She lost her mother, I lost my dad at the time. But it is. So, generations dreaming. Journey woman, journey man, you were a generation dreaming. Journey woman, Journeyman stepping off the plane to an unknown future on a certain past that became more and more like a dream that escaped you. You were a generation dreaming to change the pattern, undo the seams, restyle the suit you wore as you stepped off the boat with brush style. Frederick, this not-so-young man, had struggled as a juvenile, 30s style, to unionize, enfranchise, a troublesome man, proud to be a dark, black worker, surviving you, split seams to suit your schemes. Linda, journeywoman, you were a generation dreaming, coming from a certain past, coming to an unknown future, coming to bear us and spare us from the mass, the pattern style cut, ready to wear suits of canes, molasses, executive heat, burning good white sugar, raising a glass of rum in the sunset of the master as you sailed away to meet this man country, face to face with dreams. Journeywoman, journeyman, you were a generation dreaming a world to change. How many hundreds of thousand island voices, mother, father stories. Your coming made me as I am, not a Clarendon girl or Bridgetown girl, but a North, South, West, East London girl, even a different kind of Essex girl, the kind of black woman the world ain't seen yet, with a stance, with words that roll from me telling of West Indies trade, England sugar and bitter cane, trading culture, trading food, trading songs and enough expressions, sweet, bitter, symphony, here, on this doorstep, in that tourist board land of beef eaters, cheeky, chirpy cockneys, bowler hats and butlers, turning, swinging 60s, turning ska, reggae, dub, toasting, soul, black, funkin' for Jamaica, Barbados, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Montserrat, Dominica, Antigua, Guyana, Grenada, Tobago, Trinidad, in streets of carnival, year after year, as you cannot stop the real thing, as what do you know without us, hundreds of thousands of island voices, mother, father, stories. These poems, first few poems I'm going to read from my first collection, Connecting Medium. I do have a few copies of my book with books with me that I'll make available at the end, if anyone's interested. All right, so I'm going to jump now to, again, something of a preoccupation of mine. 5 strands of hair. I was kind of thinking of it like something like that, like sort of CSI thing. But there's a quote Alice Walker said in 1989. She said, "As a black person and a woman, I don't read history for facts, I read it for clues." 1. Part. I began clenched teeth, tight steel combs, and mother's fingers, slippery dacks, heroines pulled out the need. Plaited and stocking capped, beside her head the pungent edge of frying hair. Smoked brown paper twists, greased and combed, prevention is better than cure. 2. Clueless. Her hair is straight, no twists or crosses, a white, clean page. It doesn't read. Curled out, no markers to ancestry, that we have bad hair, that we have coolie in the family, that it's tough and don't grow. No, See? The hair's straight. It doesn't read easy. 3, twists and turns. Fact, your hair is an integral part of your skin. Fact, there is good hair and there's bad hair. Fact, hair and scalp diseases were common amongst enslaved Africans. Fact, a chemical used to straighten African hair is called lye. Fact, natural African hair must be processed to make it manageable. Fact, black women spend a major part of their income fixing their hair. Fact, straightening hair made the first US black billionairess. Fact, black women need the hairdresser more often than white women. Fact, different styles of plaiting and braiding marked rites of passage. Fact, unkempt hair is a sign of madness. Time waste. 4, a foreign head. She fetched all through Sunday best dinner, twisting and looking, question Howard Brown, a well-raised Asian girl. She was too polite until outside. Bursting, she could ask mommy friend, big woman daughter, you was a Rasta? 5, revert. Still shouldering a black star line, he said, no, don't vex the children here with foolishness. His own balding masthead, crowned with ancient mystery books, the deep science of pale, faded Egyptians, the African headdress bestowed away on me. I had dreadlocks for a good 18 years of time. It was a very interesting experience. The whole process of locksing up, the whole wearing of locks for that length of time, the changes that they went through and that I kind of went through with them, but also the, what should I say, the reclaiming, I suppose, and the refiguring I had to do of myself in terms of what is considered beautiful, what is considered acceptable, what is considered scary, what is considered frightening. Medusa Black. Medusa was a black woman, African, red. Touchy eye at a sister mirror and turn she same self to stone. She looks really killer. As she know, Medusa would know she terrible eyes leave me stone cold. Medusa lost, looking for love, kept behind icy eyes, fixed inside the barricade in case anybody come too close, running from she on. In case the worst thing happened, and she see sheself like them see she blood haunted. If you're black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. And if you're white, come on. Get alright. I said, make it go away. Make it go away. That nappy-headed nastiness is too tough, too unruly, too ugly, too black. Get back. Scrub it, bleach it, operate on it, powder it, straighten it, fry it, dye it, turn it back on itself, make it go here, make it go here. Step, smiling, into bags of acid and bleach it, red raw, peeled skin that loves to stain melanin. Operate on it, black skin, lying, useless, discarded, Powder it. Head, fuck it, wild-haired woman. Straighten it, fry it, desperately burn scalps. Banish the snake woman, the wild woman, the all-seeing eye woman, remembrances of Africa fast fading in the blonde highlights. Turn us back on ourselves, slowly, making daily applications with our own hand. My hair, as it comes, is just not good enough. Blood haunted. If you're black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. And if you're white, come down, all right? I said, make it go away. Make it go away. That nappy-headed nastiness is too tough, too unruly, too ugly, too black, too tough, too unruly, too ugly, too black. Medusa, black, get back. Let the monsters run. Medusa squeezes herself into irregular-sized compartments, wooden and fortress-like, cozy and difficult and too small to tuck in her frilly, outstretched body. Surrounding her is an older, a center cave. Under hair, let her monsters run. From all sides, ceiling, walls, floor, make a deep welcome to this sing-song body, lacy in the night. There are times when, people say every action has a consequence, and you can't always foresee things. It's easy to sometimes to look back on things and say, oh, yeah, I should have done that, that kind of thing. And this is a poem that was kind of written at the start of a relationship some years ago, and I guess I'm kind of happy that the promise of the poem was fulfilled. Surely, she laughs, she giggles, she fills me up so much, and still, it ain't enough. And we both keep saying we shouldn't be getting on like this. Be sensible. You live in with the woman you love. Me, I leave in the country in 3 months. But that doesn't change the thing. Sparked by woman chemistry, and look with those eyes is your hand between your thighs. So what? I'm leaving. You're staying here, and anyhow, you're living with your lover. So what? The time is now. So let's just go with the flow and take it for what it is. Hot, we could be having fun with few strings attached. Heart first dive in because we have so little time. Let's just make the most of it. So what? So what? Can I stop a feeling this strong? Because it's inconvenient, because it's not so tidy, because it wasn't meant to be like this, although I'm looking for love because I keep finding it everywhere, there, and now, here, with you. Wish with me that in the months to come, such a friendship grows, the kind where we could meet anywhere, anytime, and be sensible for each other, in a passion that stands above and beyond the moment, and we could make love in a car, in a hallway, in a bathroom, in somebody else's upstairs bedroom, outside, inside, because through sighs and moans, we just can't keep our hands to ourselves. Just hold on. Do you know what you're saying? So what? What if? well, what if? Am I being foolish? Should I live to regret this running after passion? I read. So I'm jumping a little bit now to this second section. So I was going to do, oh yeah. Loving women. It's a dangerous joy, well traveled all the same. In spite of threats, we have been here before, hidden in stories of back home Caribbean women, more than friends. My father knew, my mother knows of women like that. Telling no names is only after she gone. Her childhood friend tells of her Macamere great aunt living with she friend. This collection is primarily about a place in the north of England, in Lancaster, London, which is in the south. Lancaster. I was originally asked to write a series of poems, actually to write an elegy for what was for many decades an unmarked grave. It's called Sambo's Grave. Let me just read a little bit about Sambo's Grave. Yeah. So in 2003, I was commissioned to write this contemporary elegy for Sambo's Grave. The occupant is an unknown African who died shortly after his arrival at Sunderland Point. And according to a report in a magazine in 1822, the account was written in 1822 about his arrival, which was around 1736. So it's already kind of had passed into being kind of like local legend, you know. And it spoke about a captain from the West Indies who bought a servant and to Lancaster. At that time, Lancaster was kind of quickly becoming the fourth largest slave port in Britain. And the story of he came ashore, and within a couple of days of coming ashore, he died, and he was buried. And the grave kind of stayed unmarked for a long time, and then someone unmarked it. But anyway, so I was kind of asked to do this thing, which was kind of, challenging. I can say, though, that learning about Sambo's grave, exploring the history of the enslavement of Africans and how that, what should we call it, trade kind of impacted on the British mainland, you know. Very much, in many ways, kind of like, I suppose, enhanced my sense of belonging, enhanced my sense of Britishness, dare I even say Englishness, you know. That was kind of like a kind of unintended consequence of this, you know, this relationship, because we are in the land. We are literally, physically in the land. Yeah. Anyway. On Sunderland Point of Lune Estuary, Sambo of River Lune Estuary, cut off and submerged under waning facts, buried in Lancaster's memory. The myth of Sunderland Point, muddied with trade and profits, human sails, relentless waves of merchandise, its shipping tides cut off and flood far and near lives. Locals say he came off a ship, a faithful slave to a captain gone to town. Abandoned by this master, Sambo, stupefied, dies, and Christian soldiers, sailors, with goodness, bury this poor heathen soul on the shore where Sunderland points to the highways of the open seas, to ships returning from triangular trade. Shipshape and Lancaster fashion. The sailors burying Sambo knew. They ensured cargo made the crossing, keeping Africans tamed and able to sail. Sailors, singing a sea shanty blues, homesick, danced on the decks above the deep choral undertow of African voices rolling below. The first time together, new and old worlds prayed the voyage to end. Their brutish sailors' lives, the held-down terror of the submerged Africans. Home in Lancaster, did they relate stories to waiting wives and children? Or were those ships' tales remembered only when sailors shared a drunken haze of rum pint after rum pint to soothe them into forgetting our Rafa? Secrets kept to blunt disquiet, a convenient forgetfulness. Sambo's elegy. No rhyme or reason. Even when I felt at my most angriest, I felt compelled to kind of continue with this mission. And one of the people who kind of inspired me to carry on with it, inspired me the discomfort, the anger, the rage, the fear, the tearfulness of it all, was Maurice Kahn, one of my favorite Francophone Caribbean writers. In her novel Sekou, there's a character at one point who says, "If I don't sing you, who are you? Does not the word make the man?" Lying at the site of Sambo's grave, waiting for full earth to speak to me, waiting for buried bones to whisper as a flow of fears floods through me. I'm held here at Lune River's estuary, caught in fear, not daring to go down again into the ship's deep belly. The slaving schooner moored aft coursed its cargo hold, gasping with bodies unable to stretch out, heaving. I breathe out each heady in breath, a dream catcher, shipping me into the craft's dark stench, weighted with iron, smelling of vomit, sickly death of ship is fear. The surging, billowing, rolling never stops, and I bang holler, cry out, moaning in my body, let me out, let me go, sweating as I reach up in the dark recess, I search for God, grip tight to that faith like a light shaft, like a slippery light raft. Merciful Allah, hold me. Merciful Allah, avenge me, invoking old forces, pagan ways, my ancestors, my expiring neighbor, anything, anyone. Please, spare me from this trial of hopelessness, faithfulness for months, no sight of land, only the world of self-contained, lashing brine, ship on foaming sea. Men become beasts, bloody, brutally beaten, ripped, spewed on deck. Lying at the site of Sambo's grave, waiting for full earth to speak to me, waiting for buried bones to whisper as a flow of tears floods through me. Poet, reluctant to reconnect, I reach out, switch on my bedside light, waking with terrors that will not leave me. Bringing it all back home. Initially, the commission, I was only supposed to write one poem, and kind of like, several years later, produced this book because once I started, I couldn't really stop. And initially, most of the poems that I wrote weren't even about Sambo. They were about Lancaster. Lancaster in British social and economic history, Lancaster is not known as a slave port. People talk about Bristol and Liverpool, but Lancaster, people don't even necessarily realize it was a port back then. Anyway, bringing it all back home for the people of Lancaster. Here I lie, a hollow Sambo, filled with your tears and regrets, the tick in the eye of Lancaster pride, the stutter, the pause, the dry cough, shifting eyes that cannot meet a black man's gaze. Questions from either side that foul us for answers, the how and the why, ultimately defeating us with shame, anger, with the defensive voices of those who lived and enjoyed the benefits, who did not question too deeply the source that enriched all of Lancaster life. Who will heal and elevate to light the souls of your ancestors if you refuse to remember? If you cover their incarnations with half-truths? Grocer, you were a slave trader, and everything has its price, and denial is only debt with interest to be paid. But more than anything, as I went on with this project, I became kind of obsessed with who this boy was. Kind of, in many ways, was inspired by all the young men, boys, baby boys that I had, in my life over the times that I was meeting. Because, I kind of interact with my godsons, interact with, young men that I had in my life, and I'd be like, well, yeah, this could have been Sambo, this bright, intelligent, gorgeous, kind young man is this person, I think I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to keep moving. So, anyway. 99 years of Sambo. In my imagining of in my imagining of Sambo, just to say, yeah, he was from in understanding the history of slave trade as it relates to the UK, and the time that this was happening, so if it was in the 1730s kind of thing, I'm thinking, oh well, he was probably from the Senegambia region of West Africa, he was probably Fulani, he was probably Muslim, he was, yeah. So the 99 Names of Sambo is kind of playing with my wanting to know who this person had, who this young man, this young boy was, and also the kind of notion that 99 names of Allah as well. So, Bilal, Ibn, beloved, son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, kin, elder, ancestor. Sold, livestock, cargo, chattel, property, guinea bird, savage, enslaved, captive, servant, worker, heathen, cannibal, beast, blackamoor, darky, nigger, uncivilized, wop, buzzword, coup, need, tamed, eunuch, pet, Uncle Tom, minstrel, gollywog, survivor, mirror, mask, chameleon, crayon, signified, dehumanized, damned, vilified, debased, silenced, invisible, camouflage, trickster, caliban, signifier, threat, animal, oversexed, terrorizer, buck, bull, breeder, raper, lynched, raging, rebel, warrior, wusser, Cujo, leader, Toussaint, revolutionary, guerrilla, Cimarron, subversive, Cuffy, Dubby Hump, outsider, illegal, other, criminal, refugee, foreigner, exile, uprooted, immigrant, sojourner, hyphenated, prodigal son, Garveyite, Rasta, Nubian, Cushite, nation, Fulani, blood, progeny, family, Bilal. The working title of it is it's called Reader, I Married Him, and Other Such Here Going On. And then this is the title and poem. Reader, I married him, a son with his father's name, loving a man twice his age, hiding from them men that kill his last friend, chopping with a machete, the slice, scarring his face, impairing his eyes like a Mr. Rochester, but not mine. I could see a way, clear to Reader, I married him so he could live, left out a jail, take refuge in my British citizenship. my redundant heterosex right to marry any man, so I flew to sandy lanes to do it beachside, tropical style, at least in the photos that would serve as proof. His lover, my best man, gave me away, was wedding planner, witness, and wedding night delight. His, not mine, so. I was a political act, a cruise ship, lifeboat, love boat reader. I married him. This young guy, half my age, the beige and registrar looked weary at yet another rented red, giving his back. I was a politically incorrect act, bewitched for the woman, renewing her sensuality with a boy from a turnhead tourist trapped in his honey eyes, all glares and sweetened by my other man. Reader, I married him. He was all fingers and thumbs, dumb in the face of her authority. I was confident, self-assured, but still feigning beloved coyness. A blushing brown-skinned bride who produced the rings, asked his lover for the wedding bands. Reader, I married him. Arms entwined in wedding shots, we sipped each other's champagne. He held me in his arms under sandy lane columns, our photographer sneaking kisses between shots. Man enough to think of every detail they could want. Coaching Junior in his part. Reader, I married him. Reader, I married him. Played a part for the J.A. brother to escape the mob's misguided outrage, murdering love. Reader, I married him, and with our tainted love, we said, well, I'm not going to push it anymore. I think that was my closing poem. Should I do one more? Or
Yeah.
All right.
They have to be before class starts.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll do one more.
The captain's wife.
Huh?
Captain's wife.
Captain's wife? Yeah, thank you. There's a request. I'm on the request. Yeah. And so jumping back to the ship shape, that's my second collection. Jumping back to ship shape, you know, I have in my imagined narrative, you know, all the information that I have about Bilal, as he's called, is just, well, you could say just made up, but then I like to think that there are other ways of knowing apart from what might be. And there are. Yes, there are. So, how much this is an act of remembering or imagination, I'll leave for you to decide. There were various strands of narrative that I became interested in, and the one that Stephen's requested is the captain's wife's story. Because in my remembering of Bilal's life, the captain was bringing him to England for a specific reason, and that had to do with his wife. If you look at somebody like David Davide wrote a book back in the 80s called Hogarth's Blacks. You know Hogarth at all? Hogarth was a kind of an artist, illustrator, social commentator with his illustrations, and he kind of is known very much for documenting the kind of base working class kind of life of 18th century England. Yeah. But also within his portraits, within his sketches of London life, these little black figures will pop up every now and again. You know. But anyway, I won't lecture. I'll read my. The captain's wife's story. It was after a dinner with the West Indian guest, Adrian from a plantation tied to my husband's ship, that the dreams came, and my soul's light dimmed into this ease that poured out in fainting spells and anonymous pains in my room. I began to fade, a fatigue from wrestling aside an incubus, my loving husband, a slave ship captain, agent of the interests of Lancasters, Quakers, now grocers, their faith displaced by greed. Now, in the chiming of our crafted Gillow's clock, I hear the ship's bell toll. Enter an underworld inflicted with anxiety and guilt. The ship, my husband's ship, moored in blood, dispersing merchandise into the loom for our local grocers' trade in slaves, merchants and seamen spilling onto the quayside, fertilizing the terrace of my nervous condition. His hands and eyes hold me with love. The same hands that strip the meager of his flesh, prise open, dig the enslaved wounds, stroking them with briny waters for discord. On our pilgrimage to curative mineral waters to heal me of my breach, I only bubble with blood, keeping nothing down. Do you want another one?
Yes.
The present arrives. Husband. Good wife, he wrote. It troubles me you are alone while I voyage for so long. I bring you something to ease your hardship and comfort your days. It will no doubt amuse you, remind you of me, and be the envy of the local ladies. Home at last, with this strange samba, he expected her to smile, warm to this gift like a Caribbean breeze, but she turned paler than the insides of the coconut he'd shown her. She, primed with news that had travelled ahead, something dark this way comes, whispered finally through the silence, pregnant like a Quaker meeting. Get that thing out of you. Then came a screaming, and brown Bilal's eyes opening wide. The captain reached for her hand. Her recoil heaved his heart. Wife. This black-skinned boy, eyes wide and white on me. Take it out of my sight, I whisper. It is blinking. Husband, do you pretend to love me? What gift is this that hurls me into your present? I'm no senseless London lady. My insides run against me. Sweat shivers. My body gives way. The dark boy's eyes stare. So black he is a shining nightmare. A gust of sugary saliva rushes into my mouth. My avoidance defeated, my suspicions alive. Bilal. He waits, stabled with horses, until a man takes him inside the less than grand house. The captain will call him through a closed door, and he will enter as planned. He waits outside for the familiar voice, white servant, nervous beside him. The door opens on a woman with straw-thin hair that she scrapes back with pallid fingers. There he is, ill-fitted and costumed in somebody's second best. He looks to the captain, but sees him take her hand, ready to comfort, while the other flaps, fanning in order to exit. But he cannot move. His tongue twists, untwists, and twists again. So, with his lips, he grins, exposing his teeth, hoping to make the captain's lady smile. Shirt sticking to his back, her howling hollering in his ears. Bilal senses his end in her screams. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Dorothea. We'll have some time for a Q&A, and remember we have refreshments in the back of the room. So while you're asking questions, just get up and grab yourself something to eat. And if you haven't signed the attendance sheets, please do so. Also, Ms. Smartt does have some books. I think she has their book. Yeah. How much are they? $15 a piece.
They were normally expensive, but I know they
Yeah. So we will have time for the Q&A. So we have books.
But don't go hungry either.
Yeah.
Food's there. So, we'll just mix and melt. So has anyone got any questions, please? Don't you dare just go over there, take food, and not have any questions. Yeah? So yes, question at the back.
You mentioned very Sunday, but can you talk about other poets that would influence your work?
She's asking me, she said I mentioned Maurice Condé, and she was asking me about other poets that influenced my work. So very much in debt to Audre Lorde, very much in debt to Jackie Kay, another Black British poet, very much in debt to Kamal Bradway, the kind of granddaddy of virgin poetry as far as is concerned. Yeah, a whole bunch of people. June Jordan, Eileen Thomas, Jean Winterbreeze, and I suppose Keats. I had to do Keats at school. I didn't really enjoy it when I was doing it, but you know, like these things kind of seep into you, and they're there, and yeah, it's alright. Yeah,
Just like makeup.
question.
I was just wondering if you found it difficult to pursue poetry, like to be a poet, because I think there's a lot of like prejudice against poets.
Yeah.
And like if you found it hard to find a place for yourself, I don't know if you work. Do you work as a professional poet and also a teacher, or you're strictly doing poetry?
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, I did find it very difficult to pursue being a poet. I think it took me a long time, like over a decade, you know, to be able to claim being a poet, you know. And if I could now write in my passport as what I do, I do. If people ask me what do, I say I'm a poet. You know, I feel like I've kind of earned it. It's been a long journey to get me there to say that. And then also as well, people have this idea that, oh yeah, you know, you start off with poetry, but then, you know, you're going to do short stories and write a novel one day, isn't it? You know, because that's where the money is, really. So there's no money in poetry. If I could just be a full-time poet, I'd love it. It'd be really great. I have been fortunate in my career to have been commissioned, actually given money to write poetry, which doesn't happen very often. And I always feel very blessed when it does. But to eat, you know, I teach. I have taught you know, anything from going into schools and doing reception class, you know, waving my fingers in the air and, you know, doing nursery rhymes and poetry and all that kind of thing, through to working with graduate level kind of students. And my what allows me to pay my rent at the moment is I'm co-director of a writing development program. What I've been fortunate I've always been fortunate to work in what in the UK we call literature development. So I work with writers. My life is about enabling writers, poets, and fiction writers as well. So, and I'm very proud and very happy and feel very privileged to be able to do that. So in some ways, yeah, my poetry is very much part of my kind of persona and is linked to the kind of work that I do. So, yeah. Thank you. Yes?
I noticed that Reader I Married Him is the first line of the epilogue of Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mr. Rochester.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of Jane Eyre? And what do you think about the racial issues? Because in Professor Russell's class, we were talking about race in the context of the 19th century in Jane Eyre. So
I was kind of, I couldn't, when I thought of the line, Reader I Married Him, I couldn't specifically remember where it came from. Because it's one of those, you know, like doing Jane Eyre and Brontes and stuff, it's just one of those things that, you know, when you're growing up reading, it's like, you have to do it. And I remember struggling, the opening chapter of Jane Eyre, I just remember as being one of the most boring pieces of something I've ever read in my life. And I'm sorry, if she was writing that now, all of that shit would have been edited out. It would be. I mean, look, people read differently in those days. You know, the novel as a genre has changed, you know. They didn't have TV, you know, it wasn't the MTV generation. People's attention spans were way longer, and they could sit there reading a whole chapter about some bleeding tree outside of the window. But, you know, I mean, I don't think I've read Jane Eyre from cover to cover, but, you know, what I was more interested in is The Woman in the Attic, and Jean Rees, The White I Have So Seen, and that whole, the underlying narrative. And the thing that, of how, not only, you know, not in Jane Eyre, in Mansfield Park, you know, that out of that, within all of that very kind of traditional classic British literature, you know, there is this kind of shadow side, you know, that feeds into that lifestyle, that feeds into that economy, you know, and the subtleties of it are often lost on most people, you know, and so just, yeah, to some extent I was kind of playing with it, but yeah, you know, Jane Eyre is one of those things that constantly gets serialized and made into films, and it's like almost like you can't avoid reading. But I'd much rather watch the film than abridge the version and plow my way through her turgid prose.
Any more questions?
Oh, there's one.
We do have books to sign.
Okay.
This is Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy.
I'm sorry, Pascal. I'm Jeremy. Sorry, Pascal.
I'll make sure to sign the right one, but we have questions.
probably a English major or graduate undergraduate students. A lot of us, women looking out to get a real career by a lot of people that are dreams we can have. So you're pursuing fiction, poetry, what are you really getting yourself into? And I think you're an inspiration to a lot of people, even though, you have other things you haven't given up what you really love. And I think what would you recommend, what would be your advice to people who are struggling to deal with how am I going to get food on the table with, I can't let this go, this is what leads my life. What is your advice to people who are young right now, who need that kind of guidance, who's living the life that we want to live?
I suppose
It's not easy.
and you do need to eat, and for every, what's the name? What's that one who wrote those Harry Potter ones?
J.K.
All right. For every J.K. Rowling, there's some, Star Wars person, working in FedEx office, or you know what I mean? Not everybody's going to be a J.K. Rowling, but I suppose, I think, something my dad always used to say, bless him, that this is this thing of I suppose it's that thing of it's getting a balance between working to live or living to work. Yeah. And if you can align your passion with your working life, all well and good. Yeah? I mean, ideally try and aim for that. But it may not always be possible, But then I guess the next best thing is to try to have the kind of career or means of an income that is not going to strip you and disable you, drain you, sap you in such a way that you can't pursue what makes you alive, which is going to be writing. Doesn't always work out like that. So yes, you do need to get a proper job. You do need to know how to, type or, I spent years working as an administrator. I worked in arts administration. And, and that fed into my passion. But then there did come a point when I sort of said, okay, most of my life seems to be about enabling artists to do what they need to do. What about me? And I had to kind of stop it and step back and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And that was when I kind of went into teaching more and teaching creative writing. So that and then the marketing got to be too much and stuff. Yeah. So, I've always tried to work part-time, I do not have a big flash television. I do not have a car. The most expensive thing that I own is my Mac, I do not have all the trappings. I am not materialistic. I can't afford to be. The most expensive things I put money into is plane tickets, and my Mac, I don't have the latest car, the latest fashions, the latest thing. It's about deciding what's important. I do not need to have a 40-inch flat screen TV. That's not what it's about. So there's that element as well about deciding what's important to you as well.
No, not at all. Great answers.
So, is that a question?
Could you say something more about the working on the page versus on the stage? Because so much of your impact on poetry and GK has been performance, and I wanted to sort of see if you could say a couple more things about how you approach performance versus printing, publishing, reading from printed work.
Okay. I have to do this. I can't multitask. There's that lie about not being able to sort of
you guys said in class or something?
Stephen, I was going to say something about the kind of like the page versus the stage thing. I love performing. I got into poetry through performing poetry, and poetry for me is very much about a dialogue, being in conversation, with an audience. And most of my pieces start off as like, when I'm writing, I'm thinking about how I say it, how it's said, how it's delivered, more often than not. But then there comes this thing that's called a book, which is this kind of odd but different representation of what I do in a performance sense. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of, it's like, maybe it's like the difference between, the movie and reading the book. They can both be brilliant, do you know what I mean? But like, they're not the same at the end of the day, and when because when I'm thinking about stuff happening on the page, I'm very conscious of the fact that I won't be there. You won't have my voice, you won't have my presence, you won't have the eye contact, you won't have all of that. And so I become very concerned with trying to represent what I'm doing on the page in such a way that the person can get the most from it that they can without kind of me being there, and that they don't need to have me there to get something from it. What they'll get might be different, but they'll get something worthwhile, hopefully, nevertheless. Yeah? Yeah.
So you have a lot of historical references in your writing.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in kind of exploring different ways of writing for my dissertation. I don't know if that's possible, but how do you incorporate the more historical or scholarly type of things within your poetry? Or do you find that, how do you find ways to do that?
I'm sort of smirking because I've got a master's in anthropology. See it there? That was the most worthwhile thing that I got out of 3 years at Hunter College. And this is what I was writing when I was supposed to be writing a dissertation. And if I could have given this in, it would be great, but I couldn't. And, to be honest, I don't know. I just hope, I would hope, 20 years later, that there's more scope in the academy to work with and present with different ways of knowing, different ways of representing information, and there are examples of it out there. I was always very inspired by writers like there's a literary critic called Barbara Christian. You should check her out. Professor Piazzoli knows about Barbara Christian. You know about Barbara Christian, don't you, Azza?
I'm sorry.
I wrote about Christian.
What about her?
You know about her, don't you?
No, what about her? Was my dissertation director?
Yeah.
What do you want me to know?
No, I was saying she's somebody who's, one of the things I always admired about her was the way that she was able to kind of bring the personal, the political, the literary, the theoretical all together in this kind of
What about Audrey?
Yeah?
What about Audrey?
Well, yeah. But she was asking about doing her dissertation and looking at different ways of being able to present all this historical information and what have you. And I was saying one would hope 20 years on that the academy has moved on somewhat to that. And it's, often it's about finding the right supervisor, the right kind of faculty, the right kind of academic environment that will support you in doing something like that. Otherwise, you're just a lonely madman.
That's usually
Well, you're following in proud footsteps. So, don't feel away. It's a long, honoured tradition. What made me start writing in general? I think what made me start writing in general was a sense of not having anyone to talk to. It was out. I think there was an essential kind of loneliness that I experienced as a young person that propelled me into writing. Yeah. And yeah.
This is more of a, if you could, would you rather, is there anything that you would rather be doing other than what you're doing right now as a poet and as a teacher? Is there anything else in the world that you would rather do?
Kind of, sort of. I think I'd like to be doing what I'm doing, but just making loads more money. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel very blessed in that, I get to do, I have issues, I sit there, my naturopath was kind of asking me about my life goals and, work and, most people spend half their lives working, and work is this thing that they do, they're not really into. Do you know what I mean? I love my job. I love what I do, and I feel very blessed to be able to kind of to say that. There's not a lot of people, they spend their life going to work is this thing that they sort of endure and kind of put up with, kind of thing. And I haven't had that very often in my life. I feel very fortunate to be able to say that. And I know I'm very fortunate to be able to say that. But yeah, if you just add a few more zeros onto the end of everything, then yeah, I'll be fine. All right, cheers, thanks. That wasn't a silly question. Oh, yes.
You traveled to many places.
I've travelled to a lot of places, and some of the kinds of places that I've been to. Africa or Asia? Asia, no, big gap. I mean, I have at home, I've got a shower curtain that I got from Target, and I like it because it's like got the map, the whole world on it, in the sort of Peter's projection kind of way map. And yeah, I've travelled a lot, but when I look at the whole globe, there's big chunks of it that I haven't even touched. I haven't been, the furthest east that I've been is I think is Bahrain. So I haven't been to India, I haven't been to China, I haven't been to Vietnam or anywhere like that. They're all still waiting to be discovered. I've been fortunate in that at times I've been invited as a poet, as a writer, to various places. So I got to go to South Africa for the first time through the British Council. The British Council is like a trade, commerce, arts organisation that promotes British culture abroad. So they financed me going to South Africa to read poetry at a festival and go into schools and stuff. So I got to visit South Africa because of that. They were also involved with my going to Budapest in Hungary. They were also involved with my going to Egypt as well. And my writing has kind of taken me to the United States. Haven't been to South America at all. Still Brazil is still on my list. Various places in the Caribbean, mostly the English-speaking Caribbean, but I have been to Cuba as well. Yeah, does that answer your question? Did someone else have a question? That was yes.
In regards to your poem about when you were talking about like your skin color and your hair and being a woman and all that, have you ever had your hair permed, and was it like a journey to get your natural hair, or was it just like you've always been natural?
Yeah. I'm in this very, very exclusive, teeny, tiny band of black women. I have never permed my hair. Because when I was a kid, my dad wouldn't allow my mom to perm her hair. And I can count on one hand the time she put a hot corn through our hair, yeah? And even because, my dad just wasn't into it. So then, I think I went from sort of like, braids and ribbons to, as a teenager, I had an afro, and then I went from an afro to locks, and I had locks for like 18 odd years, and then after the locks came off, I've just been a nappy girl ever since. Really. There was a minute when I think the thing that gets me about, I could go on, the thing that gets me about the whole perming, weave kind of business, right, is that I really don't think that as black women, we are making an informed choice. Because there is so much pressure and so much research, information, products. There's all this support. If you want to perm your hair tomorrow, there's millions of things out there that are supporting you in doing that, And very often if women say, black women, they'll say, oh, it's way easier to manage and the job and, when I get up in the morning, like that, And I mean, the thing is, it's like, I have a hard time thinking of my hair as a problem that has to be solved.
I think though that in terms of saying that it's easier or that it's easier to manage, I think, yeah, it's an excuse a lot of times, but a lot of times the subconscious of it's easier to manage because when I was younger, I was getting into middle school. Yeah. My mom got arthritis and carpal tunnel in both of her hands. So she couldn't do my hair anymore, and I was like, I was young, I was like 12 years old, 13, I couldn't do my own hair, and I was like, struggling with it, and I had always been teased because black women, they'll perm their kids' hair 6, 7, 8, like really young age. Yeah. So everyone always made fun of me, whatever. I went into middle school, and at that time, my mother said, oh, it's just a kiddie perm, and you can wash it out, whatever. Yeah. When I got the kiddie perm, and I went back to school, my hair was straight. It was like everyone that made fun of me about my hair the year before that, they wanted to be my friend. They said, oh, you look so pretty, whatever. So in terms of it being easier, I think that's what a lot of black women do, like easier socially.
Yeah. It's very, and I find that quite insidious. Yeah. And there's something almost like quite sinister about that, And that's not to say, I don't have anything against anybody who perms their hair or weaves their hair or whatever. It's just that kind of like, it's all just so weighted against you, And I just think, if all the billions of dollars that goes into black hair and beauty and fashion, which is most of it is all about keeping it all kind of straight and the weaving and everything, if some of that billions of dollars went into kind of me keeping it like this, then perhaps it wouldn't be such hard work. It comes across as being such hard work, and then there's the whole aesthetics around it, and the whole kind of this, the kind of obsession with long hair that blows in the wind, and a particular kind of hair texture, and a particular kind of skin shade, and a particular kind, do you know what I mean? And it's like, I believe I'm beautiful,
You are.
And my hair is not a problem waiting to be solved. And honestly, this is the easiest one. Is to talk about wash and go. I'm sorry, I wake up in the morning, do this, and I don't often comb my hair, But even now, depending on how I wake up feeling, I'm not always super confident. I have days when I feel shit, like everyone else, and you walk outside and you can see people looking at your hair and you kind of feel a bit like this, you know, and you feel like you're letting the side down, you know, with your nappy self. And if I walk through, walk through those parts of Harlem, if I walk through and you get those women running up to you, because obviously you're between hairstyles, aren't you? If I go out like this, it's like, I'm between something, and they offer to help you. And I say, I don't need any help. It's fine. I like it like this. They're trying to make a living. They don't make a living. But and I'm just like, why can't somebody make a living out of keeping my hair like this? And did you see that documentary that comedian that Chris Rock did? I found that really, really upsetting. The part that upset me the most was, you have people who buy hair from Brazil and India and Southeast Asia and stuff, and the man was going around with a suitcase with the hair in it, going into the shops, selling the long tresses that you would then weave into, and glue onto your. There's something bizarre to me about that you would actually glue somebody else's hair on top of your hair rather than have your own hair show. Now, there is a ridiculousness about that, isn't there? Really? Isn't there? Well, you would literally sew someone else's hair onto your head rather than have your own hair show. Is this really that god awful? And there was that, so he went to some black bar shop, pick up artists here, and went wrong with the bag. And you should have seen the looks of absolute disgust. When you had some long Indian woman's hair holding up saying to, do you want to buy this? It was like, oh, well, he literally got chased out of shops. He got, with a bag full of this. And laugh. Is that so, what is so fucking, disgusting about this? That people were literally they looked like they were going to gag at the sight of this, there's something wrong there, isn't there? I think so anyway, And that it was reviled. It was revolting. They didn't want to touch it. Never mind him bringing it in the shop. No one wanted to sew that on their head.
Kind of reminds me of your poem, actually, the way that the captain's wife responded.
Well, with the captain's wife, I guess I was just trying to give white people a break, there was one of the things that surprised me about the slave trade in Lancaster was the heavy involvement of Quakers, who had always, so that the Quakers have always been associated with not in Lancaster, no. Oh, no. They started off as Quakers. There was silence about it for quite a long time. And what seems to have happened, they're way in the end of resolving the dilemma of becoming super rich. The amount of money that people was making was like the equivalent of kind of being like a .com millionaire. Yeah? You ain't going to turn your back on that too easy. Many of us wouldn't. The most worthy of us, oh no, never me, no. And here, I ain't here. We've got on our Nike and our Reebok. We're not sitting here sweating about, the people who are losing their hands in a factory somewhere in Southeast Asia or getting paid a penny or whatever it is for some t-shirt or something you're buying in Target or Primark or whatever. You know what I mean? There's still a lot of modern day slavery, so I'm not trying to be kind of holier than thou about it, but it was just to put that other side of things across, I suppose, and just to try and kind of connect with people's humanity in the captain's wife. But with the Quakers in Lancaster, they seem to have resolved the dilemma by just stopping being Quakers. Yeah, because then you can carry on making the money, yeah, and you know, looking after your family and you know, leaving, and yeah, and so if the, you know, if the Quakers disapprove, then you just stop being Quakers.